Played back by Drake to Lidstrom. Here's a breakaway. Look out. Hasek coming out. Oh! Gabrick right over top of Dom. Is he going to get a tripping penalty? What's he going to get? But Dominic Hasek came out.
What?
And he's going to get a trip. He can't believe it.
Lindros left it in the middle. Leclerc for his second. Clap! Oh, what a save! Do you believe that? Dominic Hasek, an impossible save on Trent Clapp. The net was wide open.
Well, if it wasn't Dominic Hasek, I probably wouldn't believe it, but that's kind of routine around here. That's right. Bow to the master.
Lemieux breakaway by Smith. Here he comes. Lemieux in on goal against Hasek. He shoots it. Hasek robs him again.
When it comes to hockey, few topics spark more passionate debates than the question of who's the greatest of all time, especially when we're talking about goaltenders. With skaters, there's often a general consensus, but goalies, that's where things get intense. Take Martin Brodeur, for example. Many consider him the GOAT between the pipes, pointing to his record-setting wins and shutouts as irrefutable evidence. But some fans argue that Brodeur's success was largely due to playing behind one of the most dominant defensive systems in NHL history. They believe the New Jersey Devils could have thrived with another elite goaltender from that era, like a Roberto Luongo. If that sounds like a reach, there's a compelling argument to back it up. In fact, the Hockey Guy did a deep dive into this topic years ago, and his take is definitely worth checking out. Then you have a goaltender like Ken Dryden, a goalie who redefined the position during his brief but brilliant career. Many older fans from his time hail him as the greatest, given how much he accomplished in such a short span. However, critics argue that his career wasn't long enough to truly cement his GOAT status. And of course, you can't overlook legends like Patrick Waugh, Eddie Belfour, Henrik Lundqvist, and Terry Sawchuk. The debate over who's the greatest between the pipes has no definitive answer. There are just too many factors and too many compelling cases to make. Today, boys, we're diving into the story of a goaltender many believe has the strongest case for greatest of all time. He was unorthodox, clutch, and a little strange. He was everything you'd expect from a goalie, embracing the madness it takes to stand between the pipes. This is the story of Dominic the Dominator Hasek. Drafted in the 10th round and hailing from Czechoslovakia at a time when the country was still behind the Iron Curtain, Dominic Hasek seemed like a long shot to ever reach the NHL, let alone become a starting goaltender. On top of that, the Blackhawks had this young kid named Ed Belfour coming up. The first 7 years of Hasek's career were spent in the Czech League, where he logged 351 games with a solid 2.76 goals against average, owning his craft as a full-time starter. Now, by 1990, the combination of Hasek's 10 years of great domestic and international success, plus a thawing of East-West relations, just made his journey across the Atlantic a possible reality. Meanwhile, no one in North America had any idea what kind of goaltender they were missing out on. By the time Hasek finally arrived in the NHL, he had already evolved into something completely unique. He didn't play by the book, he played by his own rules. There was something almost chaotic about Dominic Hasek's style of goaltending, or was it a lack of technique? He'd drop his blocker to cover the puck, throw himself into wild snow angels on rebounds and dekes. At times, he looked like your drunk uncle stepping in as goalie at the family cookout, trying to show the kids he could have gone pro back in the day if it weren't for that bum knee. Yet this weird-looking goalie wearing a player's mask had an uncanny ability to slow the puck down as it approached him. He could see the play develop before it even happened, almost like Gretzky, positioning himself perfectly to make the stop. Darren Pang vividly remembers the buzz when Dominic Hasek first showed up, and the Blackhawks had never seen anything quite like this. Hasek was a whirlwind at his first practice, throwing himself all over the ice, dropping his blocker, diving into chaotic snow angels on every rebound. It looked absurd for an NHL goaltender. but somehow it worked. Blackhawks skaters were left stunned as they couldn't figure out a way to put the puck past Dom. Hasek had this almost supernatural talent to step out of the crease, get set, and then back up as if he was daring the puck to come at him. Shooters were tricked into thinking they had space to score, only to watch Hasek slam the door and shut them down last second, leaving them with nothing. His will to stop the puck, especially in tight, was unmatched. Relentless and refusing to give up on a play no matter how desperate. You couldn't teach this style. It was too uncut at all costs. When you think of Patrick Waugh, you picture technical perfection, a true innovator. He'd lure you with the 5-hole, then shut it down in a blink. Hasek, though, was the exact opposite. Sometimes he'd give you the whole net, almost daring you to question whether he knew where it was. But Hasek always knew. He'd twist into impossible shapes or drop his blocker just before you release, leaving even the best shooter second guessing. With all this unpredictability, Hasek was able to get inside the heads of his opponents before they even stepped onto the ice. At the time, Dominik Hasek's chances of becoming a starting goaltender in Chicago were slim to none. The Blackhawks already had Eddie the Eagle Belfour, who had just completed an incredible 1991 campaign, winning the Calder, Vezina, and Jennings trophies. Hasek, serving as the third-string goaltender behind Belfour and Jimmy Waite, only managed to appear in 5 games that season. However, he would thrive in the minors, posting an impressive 20-11-1 record and a 2.52 goals against average in 33 games with the Indianapolis Ice. But Hasek's true opportunity came during the Blackhawks' most critical moments of the 1991 playoffs, as Chicago faced an unexpected first-round collapse against the Minnesota North Stars. Hasek was called upon 3 times to step in for the struggling Belfour, who faltered in his playoff debut. Despite his decent playoff debut, the President's Trophy-winning Blackhawks were stunned, choking to the Stars in 6 games. Fast forward to 1992, and though Hasek split time between the American League and the NHL, he continued to make his mark, and once again he would be called upon during the playoffs. Even though the Blackhawks were swept in the finals by the Pittsburgh Penguins, Hasek would introduce himself to hockey fans all around the world on the biggest stage. Chicago was already on the ropes in the series, and then the backup goalie comes in and pulls this. Seriously, what are we doing here? But that was Hasek. He did things his way no matter what, no matter how bizarre they seemed. 2 years into Hasek's career with Chicago, and he's still not viewed as the future, just as a potential backup for Eddie Belfour. Sure, Hasek was okay, but his style, unorthodox. People doubted it could survive in the NHL. As a result, Chicago decided to trade Dominik Hasek for some guy you've never heard of, and the ultimate journeyman, future considerations. That would end up becoming Eric Daze, so 5 out of 10 trade maybe for Chicago? Still a pretty bad one, all things considered. Following another year spent mostly as a backup in 1993, it would take an injury to Grant Fuhr for Dominik to finally get his chance, and the rest was history. Things were about to get crazy. Hasek would be given the starting job in 1994, and in his first month as a starter, he registered 5 shutouts. He played in 58 games in 1994 and had a 1.95 goals against average and became the first goalie to put up a goals against average below 2 since Bernie Perron did in 1974. Boy, that escalated quickly, didn't it? Though little was expected from the Sabres after top scorer Pat LaFontaine had a season-ending knee surgery in early December, Hasek led the Sabres into the postseason against the New Jersey Devils, where Hasek and rookie netminder Martin Brodeur engaged in a terrific matchup, highlighted by a marathon Game 6 that extended into a 4th overtime before the Sabres prevailed 1-0, 6 hours and 70 saves later. Hasek said he felt he could have played 2 more periods. The Devils would ultimately take that series in 7 games, but in June, the 29-year-old Hasek won the Vezina Trophy and was a runner-up for the Hart Trophy and was now well on his way to superstardom. The next year, during the lockout-shortened season, Hasek played in 41 of Buffalo's 48 games and took home the Vezina yet again, matching his .930 save percentage from the previous year with a 2.11 goals against against average, a 19-14-7 record, Buffalo eventually fell to the Stanley Cup champions, the New Jersey Devils, in the opening round. Though Hasek narrowly missed out on his third straight Vezina in 1995, his numbers were still incredible. Yet playoff success continued to elude Buffalo. By the mid-90s, Dominik Hasek had proven he wasn't a one-hit wonder. Year after year in Buffalo, he showcased a level of dominance unmatched by any goaltender. After missing out on awards and All-Star honors in 1996, the Dominator came back with a vengeance. In 1997, Dom claimed the Vezina Trophy, the Lester B. Pearson Award, now the Ted Lindsay Award, and became just the 5th goalie in NHL history at the time to win the Hart Trophy as league MVP. That season was one for the history books. 67 games, 37 wins, a 2.27 goals against average, and a .930 save percentage. Winning the Hart is no easy feat for a goaltender, let alone the Pearson, voted by fellow players as the league's best. Hasek had achieved something truly special, but the playoffs still ended in heartbreak. In the 1997 playoffs, even though the Buffalo Sabres managed to win their opening round against Ottawa, tensions between star goalie Dominik Hasek and head coach Ted Nolan were bubbling beneath the surface. It all came to a head during Game 3 in the opening round, when Hasek pulled himself from the game after allowing a goal in the second period, citing an apparent MCL injury. Many, including his teammate Matthew Barnaby, weren't convinced he was truly hurt, believing instead that Hasek was bailing on his team. Columnist Jim Kelly wasted no time taking the story to the press and questioning Hasek's dedication and whether he had the mental toughness to be an NHL goaltender. After a Game 5 loss, Kelly approached Hasek for an interview, and things escalated quickly. Hasek cursed him out on the spot and reportedly had to be physically restrained from going after the reporter. The outburst would earn Hasek a 3-game suspension and a $10,000 fine. After Buffalo was eliminated, Hasek cleaned up at the NHL awards. During that time, he allegedly told Buffalo owner John McClure, who also wasn't a fan of head coach Ted Nolan at the time, "I think it'd be better if he didn't come back next season," referring to the Sabres coach. In a weird twist, Nolan eventually declined Buffalo's offer of a contract extension, igniting outrage among Sabres fans, who would take it out on Hasek. Remarkably, they even booed their own reigning MVP. However, those boos quickly turned into cheers once the 1998 season got underway. Hasek's brilliant play quickly helped Buffalo forget about the drama. Hasek would again take home the Hart Trophy, Vezina Trophy, and Lester B. Pearson Award, making him the only goalie in NHL history to win 2 Hart Trophies. His numbers were somehow even better, posting a 2.09 goals against average and a staggering .932 save percentage. In December, he would set a modern NHL record with 6 shutouts in a month. That's 2 shutouts every week. Just think about that for a second. He finished the year with 13 shutouts, a Sabres franchise record. The Sabres also finally made a deep playoff run, reaching the conference finals, only to lose in 6 games to the Washington Capitals. 1999 was arguably Hasek's best year. Buffalo was primed for a Stanley Cup run as well, with Hasek putting up a ridiculous 1.87 goals against average over 64 games, as well as a .937 save percentage. He added another Vezina to his trophy case, his 5th in 6 years. Dominik Hasek made stopping pucks look effortless. Despite his record-shattering numbers, hockey is a team game at the end of the day, and no one player can carry a team all the way. Now, I won't delve into Buffalo's heartbreaking Game 6 loss, that's a whole video on its own, but when Brett Hull's controversial overtime goal sealed the Stars' victory in the 1999 Stanley Cup Final, it completely tarnished what had been a magical run for Hasek and the Sabres. Hasek posted an incredible 1.77 goals against average and a .936 save percentage throughout the playoffs, but even those jaw-dropping stats couldn't secure the 16 wins Buffalo needed. Hasek, who had achieved so much in the sport in such a short span, was still missing one thing: a Stanley Cup ring. Now, 17 years after his draft, age didn't seem to slow Hasek down. As the new millennium dawned, he picked up another Vezina trophy in 2001. But the writing was on the wall. If he wanted to truly cement his place among the all-time greats, he needed to win that final game of the season, even if it was just once. Detroit, aiming to expand their growing dynasty, knew Curtis Joseph wasn't the answer, and Chris Osgood was too unpredictable. Detroit would make a blockbuster trade, and they turned to Hasek, giving the Dominator his long-awaited shot. And I mean no disrespect to the Buffalo Sabres when I say this, but Hasek finally had a team in front of him. The 36-year-old Hasek thus began anew with the deep veteran team that included Brett Hull. The two became quick friends, but would never speak about the 1999 Cup-winning goal. Not during the 2002 season anyways. Hasek did what he always did in 2002. He dominated, posting a league-best and career-high 41 wins. But the stats that mattered most were the 16 playoff wins and those victories, including the Final Four against the Carolina Hurricanes to put his name on the Stanley Cup. Dominik Hasek was now one of the few goaltenders who can now claim to have done it all. And after the triumph, Hasek and Hull finally shared a laugh about the '99 final. It was after we won the cup and we were drinking champagne, Hasek said. Having a great time, of course. I told him it was no goal, and he told me it was a goal. On the back nine of his career, Hasek led Detroit to the promised land and had become a Stanley Cup champion. He had done it all, racking up accolades, records, and now the elusive ring. Dom had crafted the perfect case to be regarded as the greatest goalie of all time. In Detroit, Hasek never had to be the human brick wall he was in Buffalo. He just needed to perform up to the expectations on the back of his hockey card. And the Red Wings were set. Comparing the defenses of Buffalo and Detroit at the time, it wasn't even close. This could have been the perfect ending for Hasek, riding off into the sunset as a champion. On June 25th, 2002, Hasek announced his retirement from hockey, but retirement wouldn't last long. After sitting out the 2003 season, Hasek made his return for the 2004 campaign. 2 decades removed from his draft day, after missing a year, it became clear Hasek was starting to wind down. And with the lockout looming, it seemed like the end of an unforgettable career. Well, not quite. In 2006, Hasek had a resurgence, putting together another elite season, this time with the Ottawa Senators. Yes, that's right. Hasek spent a year in Ottawa and played exceptionally well. With 28 wins, 10 losses, 4 overtime losses, and a stellar .925 save percentage, it looked like Hasek was the missing piece for a Senators team poised for a deep playoff run. Unfortunately, Hasek's playoff dreams fell short. Ottawa and Hasek played well in the first half of 2006, until Hasek suffered an injury playing in the 2006 Trino Olympics, and never dressed for Ottawa again. Despite injuries and teasing retirement once again, he rejoined the Red Wings for the 2007 season, playing well and playing often, helping Detroit reach the Western Conference Final. In his final NHL season, Hasek would share the net with Chris Osgood. They shared the Jennings Trophy for allowing the fewest goals in the NHL, and Hasek started the playoffs against the Nashville Predators. But the 43-year-old finally started to struggle. Osgood had to replace him after Game 4. Chris Osgood would take Detroit the rest of the way. Detroit won the Stanley Cup, defeating the Pittsburgh Penguins in 6 games. And Hasek retired as a backup in the Stanley Cup Finals against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hasek retired from the NHL shortly afterward, although amazingly he continued to play in Europe until he was 46. He would be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2014. Dominik Hasek finished his career with a playoff record of 65-49, a regular season record of 389, 223, and 95, a stellar career 2.02 goals against average, and an insane .925 save percentage. He's second in games played all time by a European goaltender in the NHL, 6th in career shutouts with 81, and 11th all time in wins. And I don't think there's any question that if Hasek had come to the NHL maybe 5 years sooner, we'd be talking about the undisputed GOAT of goaltending. Time and time again, he carried teams into deep playoff runs that had no business being there. And he was finally able to win the Stanley Cup in 2002. And who could forget the 1998 Winter Olympics? Hasek So there you have it, Dominik Hasek, a 10th round draft pick that went on to dominate the game like no other. Thank you boys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you boys in the next one.